In sixth position, but is an early out in the race. Sammy Swindell, car 1N, continues to be the leader. We have completed 10 laps. Sammy in turn number 4 now, about to complete lap number 11. Again, 33 laps in the first segment of this race that makes up the Super Nationals here at Syracuse.
Well, with the 3 number 1s plus Doug Wolfgang running up front in the first 4 positions, battling for 5th right now on the racetrack is Dave Wickham, along with Bobby Davis Jr. Keith Kaufman is also in that group, and they're really going at it as we see a little bit of smoke coming from Swindell's wheels as he breaks loose a little bit. As the track begins to dry out, Swindell has got to stay in the most moist part of the racetrack in order to protect his tires.
And we've been noticing also there's a little bit of a bump down there on the inside of turn number 1 that the drivers pass over lots of times and momentarily gets the car out of control. Everybody's been able to hang on and not spin, but there is a little bit of a hole down there to the inside, turn number 1.
We have a wheel coming down the front stretch, bouncing very, very high, headed out for the grandstand area and also into the parking lot. A wheel off of one of these sprint cars has bounced back onto the racetrack. There you see it. I think it might have come off of Johnny Beaver's car. At least Johnny was the guy who slowed.
Well, that tire bounced high in the air and did indeed make it into the grandstand. Now, I don't think anybody was hit from it, but it did rip off the back of one of the seats here. And believe me, if anybody had been struck by that wheel, it would have caused some serious problems. But we are under caution once again, our 3rd of the afternoon. There's a car stalled down in turn number 2, and I'm not sure whether that is the car that lost the wheel or not, but at any rate, that was a potentially very dangerous situation.
Well, it's a red car. There it is, the number 98 car who started deep in the pack here for this event. Brian Seidel out of Allentown, Pennsylvania. The Schneider racing car, one of the few Trevis chassis. Floyd Trevis was a man who was very prolific in the 1950s and 60s in churning out sprint car chassis. His was the hot setup for quite a number of years, particularly in the late 1960s. He's been unseated from that throne by people like the Nance factory out in Wichita, Kansas, and certainly the Gary Stanton's people out in Phoenix. But old Floyd's still around and still churning out pretty fast race cars.
Brian Seidel started 27th position, and we have completed now 13 laps of the first 33. We'll be back with the resumption of racing in just a moment. For resumption of the Super Nationals, the green comes out once again. Sammy Swindell continues his lead. Doug Wolfgang still running in 2nd position. Jeff Swindell is 3rd, and Bobby Allen running in 4th position. Then in 5th is the number 29, driven by Bobby Davis Jr. In 6th position is Keith Kaufman, who has made a big move. He started 19th, and then running in 7th position is George Bischoff in car 3B.
And at the drop of the green flag, Kaufman was like being shot out of a cannon. He now runs in 4th position, and Keith Kaufman in the supercar of the East Coast, as we described it earlier, the Boop, which used to be the Boop aluminum car, is really rocket shipping to the front. Kaufman is in 4th position, getting ready to challenge Steve and make that Jeff Swindell. Brother Sammy continues to lead this one. Remember, we'll stop after 33 laps.
And that will be just about 13 laps. We got 15 laps completed. It's a little difficult to read the lap counter down in front of us. 15 laps have been completed. Sammy Swindell has led all the way so far. Record-setting performance yesterday. This is another number 1, and we have 4 number 1s in this race. 1A Bobby Allen, 1AZ Jeff Swindell, 1N Sammy Swindell, and just plain old number 1. This is Keith Kaufman from Mifflintown, Pennsylvania. He has moved up to 4th position at this time, and setting his sights on Jeff Swindell.
Well, Keith has won 3 times as he not only sets his sights on Jeff, but sets his sights on 3rd place. He's won 3 times in the 1982 sprint car season. This is the first time he's been in this car. Remember, the car has won 19 times, actually won 20 times. Lynn Paxton winning 19 of those 20. Kaufman, who has sat on the pole here before, is a man who's come on very strong in the last 5 years of sprint car racing, also from the Eastern Pennsylvania ranks.
So Jeff Swindell is third and Keith Kaufman is fourth as we go back to the leader. Sammy Swindell, car one in. Sammy moves through turns number 1 and 2. 17 laps have been completed. And in 16 more, we will have the red flag that will stop this race for a refuel. You can see the interval between first and second place, just about a second and a half. And that's quite a bit going this fast.
Quite a bit, not only going this fast, but also in the limited number of laps that we've run. And you really begin to wonder, is Swindell as flat out as he can be? Is Wolfgang that good? He hasn't really shaken Wolfgang. Wolfgang is only about 100 yards or so behind. The fear was that Swindell would be so dominant that nobody would be able to get near him. But Wolfgang has been able to keep him in the sights, and we'll watch very carefully what happens during the break and see exactly what changes are made on both Swindell and Wolfgang's cars. Wolfgang has won 14 sprint car wins this year, counting and adding up his World of Outlaw and All-Star wins. And he's also won twice in the USAC Champ Dirt Car ranks.
And we see a battle going on in the pack involving Rick Ferkel in car number 0. Rick also one of those drivers who has been on the World of Outlaws trail for many, many years. Car 0, Rick Ferkel. Rick hailing from Findlay, Ohio. Started in 22nd position and comes down the main straightaway.
Well, Ferkel back in 1977 was the unofficial before there was an official World of Outlaw King. Right behind Ferkel, you'll notice there's a very low-slung wide car. It's a roadster. It's a pavement car that normally runs at Oswego. Ferkel there trying to improve his position deep in the pack, looking to the high side as he came around the number 1 and number 2 corner that time. There is that low-slung dark car right behind him. That happens to be the number 91 car of Ed Thompson, who has done well here this weekend. Not only this weekend, but he has also done well here traditionally, historically, at the Syracuse race. He comes every year.
We have word that car number 112, driven by Sammy Beavers, is moving very slowly off of turn number 2 down the backstretch. And again, this could necessitate a caution period. We'll keep our eye on that. Meanwhile, we continue to follow the Rick Ferkel car, number 0. Larry, I think there's very little doubt, as the yellow does indeed come out because of the Beavers car down in the backstretch. I think there's very little doubt that everybody thinks that these first 33 laps really probably not going to see a whole lot of racing. There's not much need to push your car to the limit during this portion of the race. Instead, just run as well as you can, stay in there, and then in the second half, begin to charge about halfway through.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Bob. It is an important part of the race because it does set sort of a tempo for everybody to follow, and those who are trailing the leader, they get at least an idea of how quickly they've got to run. But more importantly, it's the setups that the crews will have an opportunity to change as we go into this break period. Also a nice break for Swindell as he and Wolfgang were beginning to approach the rest of the pack. They had finally gotten all the way around this 1-mile racetrack and were just on the verge of doing some heavy-duty lapping. And Swindell had to be looking over his shoulder right and left, looking forward and backward, wondering what's the best move for him to make. But now, our starter, Bob Watson, has taken care of that dilemma for Sammy. Well, Bob, also with the assistance of Sammy Beavers, the modified driver who has jumped into the Stanton chassis for this weekend, the black number 112. But yeah, if you're a Syracuse fan from years back, that number 112 with the black color and the gold numbers brings a lot of smiles to your face, doesn't it? But at any rate, Swindell and Wolfgang will now have an open track in front of them, probably for the remainder of this segment of the race.
And we've completed 22 laps, and we have stopped counting again because of the yellow. That means we have 11 to go before we do have the end of this session of the race. Swindell first, Doug Wolfgang second, Jeff Swindell running in third, and Keith Kaufman is running fourth at this point.
The guy who has backed up a little bit is Bobby Allen. Bobby began the race in 4th position and stayed there in the early laps, but now Allen has slipped back to about 7th or 8th position. Bischoff has gotten around him. Bobby Davis Jr. has gotten around him. Of course, Keith Kaufman. But then again, Keith Kaufman has gotten around just about everybody in this race. And the interesting thing about Kaufman, remember, he has picked up about a half a lap of ground, real estate, between himself and the leaders. He has slowed down since he got to the first 4. I would imagine he really abused his tires in that drive to the front. And we could see a lot more from Keith Kaufman, but I don't expect it until the second segment of this race.
There is the 1A driven by Bobby Allen from Hanover, Pennsylvania. Bobby started fourth, but as Larry indicated, has fallen back a few positions since the start of the race. The green is back out on lap number 22. And we watch them go down into turn number 1. Doug Wolfgang still holding on to second position. And I believe Keith Kaufman has moved up into third.
Yeah, he smoked Jeff Swindell down to the number 1 corner. He jumped down on the low side and go down a front chute. And he forced Jeff to go into number 1 much harder than what Jeff has been doing. And Keith got underneath.
So there is Jeff Swindell, who has now moved to 4th position. Sammy Swindell was still about second lead on Doug Wolfgang, and about that interval between second place Wolfgang and third place Keith Kaufman.
Well, we're down to less than 10 laps to go here in the first segment. And now another thing that some of these crews have to be thinking about may be fuel. We've had a large number of caution flags. The cars basically run not a large fuel tank, but also they may have been doing a little second guessing. They only had to go, of course, 33 miles, and they may not have filled them all the way up to the top. The less fuel you have, the lighter the race car. And we've run quite a number of cautions, so if some of the teams were taking a chance on running what they consider to be a minimum amount of fuel, that could be a problem for anybody out there.
There is Sammy Swindell, who began his racing career several years back and really got into the record book for the first time back in 1976 when he was the youngest driver to ever qualify for the Knoxville Nationals. In 1976, he won 27 feature events and track championships in 2 divisions, and since then it's been continued success for Sammy Swindell, who is the current reigning king of the World of Outlaws sprint cars.
Well, Bobby Davis Jr. continues to run in 5th. George Bischoff, in the wake rather of a great season, runs 6th. In 7th position unofficially right now is Kenny Jacobs from Holmesville, Ohio. Running 8th is the number 12 of Shane Carson, the sometimes racing promoter from the racing family. 9th is car number 57, Steve Yodak, another of the Eastern Pennsylvania drivers, and unofficially in 10th position is Bobby Weaver. Bobby Weaver out of York, PA, who's been around for about 8 or 9 years running sprint cars, has moved up from 24th starting position in car number 20, Bobby Weaver, and he now runs in 10.
And there is Keith Kaufman, who is now running 3rd. Keith started this race in 19th position, qualified a little more than a second off of Sammy Swindell's record-setting pace yesterday, and started 19th, but has now moved to 3rd. And I think without question that Keith Kaufman is going to be a driver to watch in the second portion of this race.
Outside of the top 10, some other people running competitively, and remember, they're going to have a better shot at it when we go green on the second segment. 11th position is Barry Camp right now. In 12th position is the only roadster entered here, the number 91 car. Remember, we talked about him a little earlier, Ed Thompson. He has done well in this race. He started in 35th position, and the Oswego Roadster now runs 12th. How about that? And in 13th position is the Howells car, number 4, with the USAC driver Jack Hewitt behind the wheel.
And now Sammy Swindell is in quite a bit of race traffic. As we can see, Doug Wolfgang has closed the interval on Sammy Swindell. We go down the backstretch. There are only 4 laps to go, and look how close Doug Wolfgang is to Sammy Swindell as both of those leaders work through race traffic in turn number 3. That can mean the difference. Race traffic, the slower cars ahead of you coming out of turn number 4. The slower cars move to the outside of the racetrack, and Sammy Swindell takes to the inside.
Swindell and Wolfgang, the 2 leaders in going home, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock traffic, but the difference is they're doing it about 150 to 155 miles per hour going down the straightaways of a very tight racetrack for a sprint car track, particularly at these speeds. There is Swindell right now going to the high side of Johnny Beaver as they come out of turns 3 and 4. Swindell right in the middle of a whole bunch of sprint cars.
And Swindell moves around safely, but I'll tell you, there is a lot of race traffic out there. Doug Wolfgang now right on his back tailpipe coming out of turn number 2 down the backstretch. We have completed 31 laps. They will be getting the white flag this time around. Swindell and Wolfgang move through turns 3 and 4. Here they come down the main straightaway. The starter looking for them out of 4. Here they are, and the white flag is displayed. One more lap to go. Sammy Swindell appears